Hey y'all, it's Andrew Couch here, and in this Tidy Tuesday video, it is the conclusion of the Season 1 Tidy Tuesday series. So I've officially done a full year of Tidy Tuesday weekly content, and I figured for my last video for this season, I would end with a Q&A. So who am I? I think with my videos, I didn't really explain a lot of my background, so I just wanted to go over kind of who I am, and why I did the series. So I'm actually from Iowa, from the Midwest, and I went to ISU my freshman year, where I was planning on majoring in computer science and finance. So I actually had a good amount of programming classes in high school, where we were basically learning VBA. And once I actually got to Iowa State, which is pretty known for their engineering and stats programs, I found that I actually didn't really enjoy pure programming. I really enjoyed mostly looking at numbers and also dealing with stakeholders and doing a lot of meetings and just kind of talking with people, but also doing some technical data work. So I switched into MIS, which is Management Information Systems. And since ISU is not really known for their business school as opposed to University of Iowa, I decided to transfer over to University of Iowa my sophomore year. And then I just completed my college years through University of Iowa and graduated in, I think, May 2020. So it's pretty interesting graduating with COVID and stuff like that and looking for a job. It's probably one of the hardest things I've done in my 20s, just working on a farm and applying to jobs during a pretty competitive job market. But I managed to survive, and I think it really taught me a lot of who I am and what I wanted to do in my career. So what I really like to do when I'm not doing any coding or R data science research is I like to travel a lot. So usually I travel out of the country once every year, either with my family or just with my brother. Unfortunately, with COVID, especially in 2020, I didn't do a lot of traveling. I went to Colorado for a week, but that was it. But I definitely enjoy a lot of traveling. I did a study abroad in London for a business school, so I was in London for a little bit, and I've been to basically every continent besides Antarctica, which I actually really want to go. I need to figure out how to get there. So one of my main hobbies is actually not really data science. How I actually got into data was through politics. So basically, when I was in high school, which was before the 2016 election, I was heavily interested into politics, specifically elections. So when I was taking a few stats classes in high school, we kind of use stats to look at polls and understand intuitively how to figure out what confidence intervals are. And I thought that was really cool. So after my stats class, I basically studied politics for a decent amount just in my free time, and I read a lot about specifically about elections. So doing all of that basically made me go into reading a lot of 538, which they're known for their modeling and forecasting the election. So that got me into looking at data and trying to figure out how to do my own modeling, which I actually only knew Excel and Java. So I was basically doing a lot of Excel work in politics, and then I decided that Excel wasn't strong enough, so I simply Googled, how can I manipulate data programmatically at a higher rate. And then the first page told me to look at R. So I looked at R basically my sophomore year of college. And then that's basically how I really got into R. And also, I'm really into MMA. Throughout college, I really got into looking at MMA and just watching UFC with my brother and a few of my friends. So I watch UFC fights probably every week when it's available. So usually on a Saturday, I'll throw it on a UFC fight on one of my monitors, and then I'll do some coding or some work where I want to figure out what I want to do for my video projects. So I wanted to use this slide to kind of reflect on this entire series. I started this series in February while I was a senior in college, and one of the main reasons why I actually started the series was I was really bored for my last semester senior year because basically at the beginning of the second semester for college in Iowa, it gets very cold. they're basically stuck in your room. And for me, since I was living by myself, I was kind of bored. So I did a lot of R work. And then when I was actually doing my capstone project with my other friends, they kept on asking me like, how did I get good at R? And I said like, oh well, I just kind of practiced a little bit. I did my own little side projects that I found interesting, and I thought it'd be kind of a good idea to make a video where they could I could kind of show my mindset of me programming in R. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to start the series, because I was bored and wanted to show my friends. But also, I thought that there was kind of a misunderstanding of people's mindsets when they're working on a project. Specifically, like I think when you're in college and you're looking for a career, you watch a lot of like a day in a life of a blank video. So for me, I was watching a lot of like a day in a life of a data scientist video, and a lot of those videos are pretty worthless, because they don't really show them do anything. It's mostly them on the computer. So I wanted to make kind of a video just showing someone like what a person actually does when they're analyzing a data set. You know, them saying like, oh, well, I want to use mutate to put this another column so I can look at the ratios of something. And I want to plot this out to see if there's a relationship, or maybe I want to model this out to control for something else. So I wanted to make a video really just showing someone who doesn't know anything about a topic, just looking into it and kind of explaining the thought process. And lastly, I think one of the reasons why I really stuck with this project was because I was still looking for a job, and I figured that me doing a weekly video teaching something could kind of keep my technical skills sharpened while I was looking for a job. Because, you know, I was just working on a farm planting trees in the summer, and then I was just applying for jobs at night. So I didn't have a lot of time to actually do a lot of programming. So I figured this series was a good way to keep me sharp. Um, so yeah, that's basically why I started this series. What I really enjoyed about this series was probably just the community. To be honest, I didn't really expect this channel to get that big, even though this channel is very small. It only has like 1,000 subscribers, but I really didn't envision such a niche topic, you know, like data science with R, specifically the tidyverse. I didn't think that was a very, I didn't think a channel could really grow into like a channel that had more than 100 subscribers, to be honest. So I was very, I was kind of impressed by how many people were commenting and how many people I actually interacted with through this series. And I really enjoyed like all the interactiveness. I enjoyed reading people's comments and them asking me questions of why I thought that. I really enjoyed it when people actually gave me suggestions saying like, oh, if you want to do this, you should try out this package, or hey, it's actually faster to do this function because it's like vectorized and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed the community aspect of it. I think one thing I would change is that I wish I figured out, you know, the structure of the videos. So for example, the first probably like 3 or 4 videos was me pretty much improving a data set. And although I think an improv, like doing an improv for the data set is interesting, it kind of constrains you in a way where you can't really go over a lot of complex things. So when I was going over like embedding models and LSTM models and transfer learning, that wouldn't be a good, it would be very hard to do that from an improvisational standpoint. Whereas if I actually have a data set I want to show people and I want to show this topic, it's easier for me to kind of plan it out. So I kind of wish I figured that out before I actually did my series, but the series is pretty improvisational. So that's, I'm fine with having some of my videos not be as focused as I would have wanted it to be. So I just want to say that for this future of the series, I'm going to be taking a 1 month long break. I think after posting videos for 1 year straight, one time every week, and having a full-time job, I think it's, for me, it's time to just take a break from the series, kind of regroup myself. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm leaving this channel and I'm not going to make any videos. In fact, I'm actually going to try to improve this channel and improve this series. So I'm going to probably make some changes in this series frequency too. I think adding a little bit more editing and a little bit more polish on these series, on these videos would be better. So for example, a lot of these videos, I just kind of do a one take and I just go through it. I think adding some type of editing, some visuals, just to show some more intuition of things I want to show. Additionally, I've had a person reach out to me and talk about like, oh, doing collaborations and having more um, collaborative work, and I think that would be a good idea. So I want to basically add a little bit more variety to these videos, and also a little bit more polished visuals. I don't want to go away from the main point of this channel, which I think the main point of this channel is showing the raw code of these ideas. So when we're talking about image classification, we actually go over the code to do image classification. So I want to keep that, but I want to also have, a little bit more higher level, more interesting visuals like StatQuest does and Code Emporium does, while still remaining centered around the code. So I think adding that will kind of help a lot of new people who aren't as familiar with the tidyverse and not that familiar with R can kind of understand these ideas from a visual standpoint, and then they can kind of see how the code interacts with each other. So now I'm actually going to go over the questions that I received from my Q&A submission form. I definitely didn't do all the questions because some of the questions didn't seem appropriate for this video. Not because they were inappropriate, but it's just because they didn't really go over a lot of things that I think was necessary to be addressed in this Q&A video. So if I butcher your name, I'm really sorry. I'm just terrible with names, regardless of your nationality. So this first question is from R. Kumar. Andrew, I really like the videos that you make. What software do you use for screencasting? I work for a LA Unified School District and have to make some tutorial videos for my colleagues, which I can't upload to on YouTube due to student privacy issues. Some folks are suggesting Camtasia and Cam Studio. Any pointers would be appreciated. So what I actually use is OBS. I think OBS is probably the most straightforward way to actually do screen recordings. For me, I think I just kind of plugged in my webcam and plugged in my microphone into my computer, started up OBS, and then kind of just overlaid a little webcam screen on the bottom right corner. So definitely look at OBS first because it's free and it's pretty easy to customize. So that would be pretty. I think that would be the first thing that you should look at. So Paul V says, what does a typical day look like at your job? What is an example of a project you're working on, and what are the deliverables? Is the job what you expected it to be? I learn a lot from your videos. Thanks and keep it up. So right now I'm a data scientist for a transportation company, and I think a typical day is basically a combination of meetings and coding. So basically, I think a typical day would be me going to a morning meeting, kind of just showing like, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? What problems are you facing right now? And then after that, you do a bit of coding for me. For me, I do a decent amount of coding now just because I have really less meetings because I have some solid projects I need to work on. And then probably in the afternoon, you might have to like message one of your colleagues or like a database person and say like, oh, hey, where's this table at? Or why is this field saying this? What does this date mean in the context of a missing value? Stuff like that. So it's really a combination of meetings, presentations, and coding. So what is an example of a project you're working on and what are the deliverables? I don't think I can go over the projects explicitly, but it's really a combination of like a typical classification problem, some NLP classification stuff, some like NLP sentiment stuff, and a decent amount of time series forecasting. So one of the things I was kind of surprised about was the amount of time series projects that I had to work on, especially since time series stuff is not something I'm that comfortable with, but it's something that I really kind of enjoy doing. And I think the job is a little bit, it's definitely more different than I expected it to be. So for example, the position I have is way more full stack than I expected it to be. So we do a lot of deployment ourselves. But for the actual stuff that I do, it's typical data science stuff. So what do you like and dislike about using R for general data science work, Ben? So I think what I really like about using R is the internal stat functions in R. I think that's pretty easy. And additionally, the tidyverse. So one of the problems, again, with like using R versus Python is Python doesn't have a great data visualization besides like Plotly. But with R, all that stuff is kind of combined together with the tidyverse. So you can use ggplot and dplyr together pretty easily. I will say one thing I don't like about R is that one, it's pretty hard. I mean, it's kind of hard to use multiple cores with R, so that can slow it down, especially if you're working with a lot of large data. And two, it's kind of hard to do a lot of deployment. So like using Docker with R, it is definitely doable, but the amount of documentation is way less compared to someone using Python. No task or notist says, hi Andrew, a huge thank you for your videos. In particular, I've enjoyed your focus on the tidy models framework and hope you keep on going. It's been super fun and educational to see you work on unseen data occasionally as well. I would also love to hear more about what practical skills you've acquired and reflections you've had since starting your job. Is R still your main tool, and what are other important tools for up-and-coming data scientists? How useful is Tableau? How much SQL do you think a data scientist needs to know? I'm really excited about your plan to incorporate Python in future videos as well. As much as I are, there seems to be a lot of more job opportunities with Python. Keep up the great work. Yeah, so one of the things I think that you need to know with, using with more skill, one of the skills that is basically underutilized or under talked about as a data scientist is one, understanding how business processes work. So the actual modeling is not the hard part. It's actually understanding like, why is this data here? How does this actual process work? And how can I use it to model out, a machine learning model? For example, like a lot of times you'll see some problems where like you have dates that are saying like 1900 or a date that says 999. Those dates are meaning something, but you actually need to figure out like why it's like that. Probably because, one date could mean like, oh, it means that they haven't been assigned something, or maybe that they've already churned out. So being able to understand a business process or a process in a business is very important for a data scientist to know. And I think it's the most underrated thing. Being able to do, a lasso or elastic net or ridge regression is not that important compared to understanding a business process. Is R still your main tool, and what are the other important tools for up and coming data scientists? I think one of the most under talked about tool is probably was it the is definitely SQL. I basically code in SQL for half my coding and then R for the rest. Additionally, Alteryx is an underutilized or under talked about software because most businesses will be utilizing Alteryx over R and Python. Most business users are using Alteryx workflows, and it's something that a data scientist needs to be cognizant of and at least know the basics of a workflow, because you can set up a lot of like automations for your R or Python scripts, but most of the time people will want it in like some type of Alteryx workflow. So how much SQL do you think a data scientist needs to know? I think a data scientist needs to know basically like how to do, queries pretty well. So you need to know the difference between like a having and a where. You need to know how to do, some simple joins. You need to know the difference between a left and a right join, an inner join when you want to use that. Definitely utilizing case statements is a good thing, but actually doing like, database construction and stuff like that is something that I don't think is very important, but it definitely doesn't hurt to know. Okay. So, mutual investor says, I'm looking to build or purchase a workstation for data science and model building. Given my plan to utilize tidy models heavily, how much would you recommend that I allocate most of my financial resources between process cores, memory, and GPU? I think it's probably, I definitely am not someone who knows a lot about, computer architecture, but I would probably say spend most of your money on the processing core, get an i7. Try to have it not as multi-core, so have more speed in the individual core over like eight cores, so like a faster 4-core than an 8-core processor. Additionally, if you're working with a lot of large data, you might want to increase your RAM to like 64 gigs. If you're going to do any deep learning or computer vision, which is not really something Tidy Models uses, you'll definitely want to look at like an NVIDIA GPU. But since you're only using Tidy Models, I'll focus on, a very fast 4-core processor with like at least 32 gigs of RAM. Okay, Michael S says, what is your favorite thing about your job? So my favorite job about being a data scientist is that I get to make plots, models, and communicate findings, and get paid for it. So I was always just making charts, finding random data sets, seeing what I can do with it. I like making models, and I like making decisions using data. So being able to basically do all that stuff that I enjoy doing while actually getting paid for it is my favorite thing about my job. You have a system of tracking habits or how well you're sticking to your data science aims or probably goals. Um, I guess personally, so on my own free time, I really don't like setting a ton of goals for myself. I really kind of just do like a random walk where I see something interesting, I try it out, and if I don't like it, I'll just quit. As for like professional goals, I generally try to stick with like a 1, 3, and 5 year plan. So for my 1 year goal, I want to learn some Python, but how I learn Python for that 1 year goal is going to be different. So I'm not going to force myself to learn NumPy if I don't really like it. I'll switch over to Pandas, or if I don't like scikit-learn when I'm learning some Python, I'm not going to just force myself to learn it. But my 1 year goal would be still to learn a lot of Python. As for like my actual job wise, how do we stick to our deliverables? We definitely just do like Scrum or like Agile practices, which I really enjoy. So, what is your all-time favorite MOOC or online resource? Definitely RStats Twitter. I mean, I don't think there's any single like book that I like reading or I reread a lot, but I think RStats Twitter, or specifically following like the Tidyverse employees, so like Max Kuhn, Julia Silgi, etc. All of them provide a ton of resources, whether it's them working on the packages and reading the code, or reading the pull requests and issues, or them actually like writing textbooks that you can read online. So I think RStats Twitter, and specifically the Tidyverse or RStudio team, is a fantastic online resource. Any plans on creating your own course? I feel like you'd make a great teacher. I really appreciate that you guys like my teaching style. I really try to make it so you don't have to have any past knowledge of like stats or computer science. You just kind of have to figure out and like read some of like the R Tidyverse framework. That being said, I have no plans on creating my own course, but I think in the future, like for my profession, I'd like to get into teaching. I think now, since I'm a data scientist, which was actually one of my 5 year goals, is to become a data scientist, is teaching. I really like teaching. So one of the things I think would be interesting is, one, like being a teacher, or teaching being a professor in college and teaching like data science in college. But one of the things I really would want to do um, is probably teach in a high school. So I think having a data science class in high school would be super interesting, and I think would be good for society as a whole. And that data science in high school would be like how to understand or interpret data, right? How to read a chart, how to use data, what to look for in data, and just like being able to understand and read data, or being able to think analytically, would be a great course in high school. Because I think in the age of the 21st century, every single profession has to use data, whether it's Excel, looking at averages or means, or just doing actual like deep learning. It all requires data. So I think having a data literate population is an important step in society, and I think teaching that in high school is a great way to kind of go with that goal. Do you think a master's degree in data science is worth it, or is it better to study by yourself? That question was made by Sebastian, and I think it's a very complicated question, because on one hand, I think getting a specialized degree in data science makes a lot of sense at first. However, I think masters are a lot of the time a money grab, and a master's degree in data science is just too early to know. So if you want to become a data scientist and you have the option to do a master's in data science or statistics or computer science, I would argue it's better to do the master's in statistics or computer science, or even econ. And being able to study data science techniques is pretty easy if you have a pretty strong technical background, say in stats, research like psychology, econ, or computer science. So if you come from like a mathematical background, maybe getting a master's in computer science would be better. If you come back from a computer science background, maybe getting a master's in statistics would be better. If you come from a research background, probably doing a master's in computer science would be easier. So for me, I definitely don't have a master's degree. And I mostly self-taught myself a lot of like R and stuff like that. But I also, had a decent amount of technical experience from just like talking to professors, taking some stats classes and stuff like that. So I think it's actually easier to or better to study by yourself and get a master's in either stats or computer science. Okay, Johamo R from YouTube. Hey, thanks again for all your work. I am a student in economics in France. I discovered R less than 1 year ago, and your videos have been really helpful to me. I'm watching them almost every week since a few months ago now, because even though I don't usually have time to practice, it opens a lot of doors to what to do and learn next. Your last video, for example, is really great for that. Again, thank you. About the question, it could be nice to know more about your background, either in college or concerning programming. For example, how long have you been using R, and if you're using other languages on a daily basis. In France, R is getting big in university, but it feels like Python is the software which is getting the big prize in business companies. So my main background in college was BAIS, or Business Analytics and Information Systems. But I had a pretty strong background in programming, so I knew VBA and I knew Java pretty well. And then I taught myself R my sophomore year of college, where I was learning that specifically like doing like random data analysis and random charts. So my first data set I ever looked at in R was the Titanic's data set. And then I went on to do like a lot of like NLP stuff and a lot of charting. So that's how I learned R. So I know I've been using R for the past 4 years, but I really got good at R probably my junior year during my internship, where I had a lot of free time where I read a decent amount of R textbooks. So one other language that I really use on a daily basis is definitely just SQL, and that SQL isn't very complicated. It's mostly a bunch of like, selects with some filtering, some like with statements and stuff like that. So just some subqueries and some joins, so nothing too crazy. I think with regards to Python being Python being used more in industry and R being used in education, I think that's kind of a problem right now. I think especially the R that's being taught in university isn't the greatest R that can be taught. So I think obviously teaching the tidyverse is better for learners who are learning R. But also I think if you can learn R fairly well, it's pretty simple to transition to Python. Most of the people that I work with who are data scientists, they learned R a little bit in university, but they found that they like Python better, so they taught themselves Python. Each language has their own advantages. I will say R has a better community. So if you're doing a lot of like self-teaching, or you want to read a lot of textbooks to learn R, I think R is a better resource, at least having a community standpoint. Oh, what the? Okay, I don't know why I did that transition. So Rogers says, where are the best places to learn data science on the internet? I think probably the RStudio blog is the best place to learn it. So if there's any new data science stuff that you want to look at, the RStudio blog is great. Another good resource to look at for like understanding a package is just looking at the GitHub repo of a package, and specifically seeing if there's like a nice little blog down page or like a nice little vignette to show the examples. But definitely looking at GitHub, RStudio's blog, Bookdown. So any like Bookdown page is a good place to learn data science. Corel says, hi, which books or sources would you suggest for one to learn more about machine learning techniques? So the first book I read to learn about data and machine learning techniques was Max Kuhn's Applied Predictive Modeling, which I believe there is a textbook, and that's a textbook that really got me into machine learning and understanding the basics of it. Another good book is Statistical Rethinking, which is like which I believe is a free version like on Columbia's website. So definitely like Statistical Rethinking and Applied Predictive Modeling are the go-to textbooks that I would recommend to learn machine learning. Ivan says, can you give us a real-life example of what kind of problems you need to solve in your data science job? Thanks. So a lot of the problems that I face at my company, especially with working in data science and transportation, is understanding how our drivers react to the business. So one of the things that we want to make sure is basically how can we ensure the best quality of life for our drivers, who are our main factor in driving revenue and profit for the company. For example, we don't want drivers to leave. We want them to continue working for us. It's very hard to train drivers. So hiring drivers, when we hire them, there's a lot of training that goes into it. So basically, how can we prevent drivers from quitting? How can we make sure their life is easy? So stuff like that, where it's whether it's looking at like reviews that our drivers gives about different products, helping drivers helping drivers get back home on time and stuff like that. So most of my job basically relies on basically improving quality of life for our drivers or our employees. Calling Power says, first off, thanks for the great content. Have you ever dabbled with Bayesian methods in your data science projects or / free time? As a self-learned Bayesian, I find some of the black box moments for example, in machine learning to be frustrating. I really miss the expressive way of Bayesian model and many of the data science tools available. Thoughts? So I definitely think if you come from a stats background, I guess, or if you really enjoy Bayesian framework, it really is hard to get into these black box models, especially because it can get frustrating with understanding what's going on. But I think a lot of times black box models are easier to learn with beginners. As for me, I do a decent amount of like BRMS modeling at my work because we actually care more about interpretability over black box models. So I do a decent amount of like binomial regression models and stuff like that. Julia says, what's your favorite project that you've worked on during your career or studies so far? So I think the project I'm most proud of right now is the TidyTuesday project. I really enjoy making videos, and I'm really proud of the community I created. Even though it's very small, I think it's a very good community, and all of the content made by my commenters and subscribers has been super productive and honestly creates a good discussion. My favorite data science project is probably my Sweetboard project, because I think it has the most use for my own work, specifically looking at text data. And I really enjoy just creating that because to me, it was a really cool thing to do because I like looking at social media data, I like looking at text data, and I like creating dashboards. So being able to combine all that stuff all together is pretty cool. One of my favorite projects that I worked on in my career was probably a project centered around assessing review quality. I can't go too much into it, but it basically combined a lot of Bayesian methods and NLP and topic modeling. So I got to basically combine, a lot of NLP work while also combining, some Bayesian analysis. And it is real, and the actual product of it, combining, the text analysis and the Bayesian analysis together, created a really cool dashboard. Which I think the people at my work will really enjoy, and seems to be having pretty good feedback. So that's my favorite project in my career. Basically, a review analysis using NLP and Bayesian analysis. So Golden Grams says, how do you have such motivation to do? Wait, sorry. I'm sorry. How have you such a motivation regular? How do you have motivation in your regular work and do it for free? Thanks. I've learned some things with you, Quentin. You should also do a blog down. I think a blog down would be interesting. I definitely need a little bit more time to look at that, but I think the reason why I have so much motivation to do these weekly videos is because because of COVID. With COVID, I'm basically kind of stuck in my own house. Can't really do a lot. So for me, it's not too big of a deal, but I definitely think I need a break for now, for at least a month, to collect my thoughts and relax a little bit. I will say how I actually create my videos is I make them very spontaneously. So usually I am planning that I want to make a video every week to be probably released on Monday, and then have it to be uploaded on Monday, and then to be actually released on the Tuesday. But the actual ideas come up usually like on a Saturday or a Sunday night, and then I kind of just workshop it. So I'll think about the idea, I'll find a data set that maybe matches with it, then I'll write it, and then I'll probably record, and then I record it on the Monday and release it. So generally, I only spend about 2 hours. So 1 hour thinking of the idea, workshopping it, and the other hour actually recording it. So while I'm gone, I would say check out my GitHub because I'll probably still continue working on a few different projects. Also, watch other YouTube channels. So 3 YouTube channels that I really like to watch that definitely do similar content is David Robinson. I love David Robinson's videos. He was the one who really inspired me to make some Tidy Tuesday videos. Julia Silge makes fantastic videos about tidy models. And then Code Emporium. I think Code Emporium is just a fantastic data science channel. I think all of his content is great. It really reflects on like, on a high level, what data scientists should be thinking about. I think David Robinson has, the most creative R programming that I've watched, and Julia Silge just has really good tidy models videos because she has a direct relationship developing tidy models. I will also say I spelled check out wrong, but check out RSAT's Twitter. Some people that I like to follow is Dr. Jacqueline Nollis, and she has fantastic R content and R memes. Speaking of memes, Chelsea Parlett Pelleriti, she's very famous among like stats Twitter and RStats Twitter. She has a fantastic Twitter page. Thomas Mock has, again, fantastic content. He really helps with like data table and NFL data. And then lastly, Emily Robinson, which she also makes really good content. She also does a lot of, she wrote a book on data science careers. And finally, I want to say thank you for watching all my videos for a year. And I'll see you guys next week, and tidy on.